Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Hydroponics Daily. Today, I'm going to be talking about the benefits of growing hydroponically. I've done this podcast a bit back to front. I've talking about the benefits last, and I've talked about how you grow first. So if you're in two minds about growing hydroponically or you want to know more about it, this is the episode for you. I've got 7 good benefits, advantages of growing hydroponically. Now, the first one is the one that's most often talked about, and that is that you get more crop per unit area. This is because your plants don't need to go foraging around for nutrients and water. It's right there in the fertigation solution in the inert media. So you're providing this fertigation solution in an inert media, and so you don't have to produce as big a root system, and the plants don't have to work as hard to get the nutrients. They don't have to break them down and rely on fungi and the biology to break it down. It's all there. So this means that you can get really massive increases in yield. Things like aeroponics, as we talked about in the past, these are really high yielding. And if you think about it, in cut flowers, you can get 60 plants per square meter, which is crazy. You would never get that anywhere near that in soil if you're growing something like chrysanthemums. So you're getting vast increases in yield. That is why most people grow hydroponically. That's why you get really large commercial greenhouses. All the tomatoes and cucumbers grown in the UK now are all grown hydroponically because the yields just mean that anyone grown in soil would be blown out of the water in comparison. Second massive advantage for hydroponics is that you can get out of season production. So you can grow crops out of season under artificial light, artificial heats. There's no soil, so you don't have to warm the soil or anything like that. You just have a warm fertigation solution, and you can grow out of season produce. So if you think about strawberries, they used to say around 2005, if you could grow to 2010, if you could grow strawberries for Christmas, it was a license to print money. And now everyone eats strawberries at Christmas in the UK, and we don't even think twice about it. You go back 10, 12 years, that was not a thing. That was maybe a thing for people who went to Marks and Spencer's and bought 5 strawberries in a tray for a £5. But it was not the common thing. Now it is very common for strawberries because they're all grown hydroponically, either in Spain under hydroponics, or the UK or Holland or somewhere like that, Italy. So now hydroponics has massively taken that on. Okay. And the third reason for growing hydroponically, and the reason commercial growers do it, is an absence of soil-borne diseases. Now, I mentioned just now chrysanthemum growers. You will not find a chrysanthemum grower now that doesn't grow hydroponically because they used to grow in the same soil every year, and the pest and diseases built up to the point where either they moved to hydroponics or they went bust. Most of the UK chrysanthemum growers went bust. So if you are growing a crop that suffers with really bad soil-borne diseases, then hydroponics is the answer. Now, for something like hops, that's really difficult because hops grow 6-7 meters tall. But for something like raspberries and strawberries, that has certainly been the case. And now, if you went back 15 years in the UK, most strawberries were grown in the soil. Now you'd struggle to find a strawberry farm other than a pick your own strawberry farm. It's catering to the general public, picking their own as a source of as a pastime. You would not find a commercial strawberry farm growing in soil. They're all growing in cocoa, on gullies, in the air, in tunnels. And the same for raspberries. Raspberries are now grown in cocoa in pots. Blueberries are all grown in pots for this reason. And it's also, the main reason is to prevent soil-borne diseases. There are loads of diseases in strawberries, raspberries, blueberries that build up in the soil. And if you can grow hydroponically, you can remove that completely because you can rejuvenate your growing media. You can flush sterilizing agents like peroxide and other sterilizing agents through the system, so non-pesticidal ones. So that's another really good reason for growing hydroponically. The fourth good reason is the optimization of your fertilizer treatments. So you can provide a liquid that contains every essential nutrient, and you don't need to worry about lockout. Well, you do need to worry about lockout, but if you do it correctly, you won't get any lockout. Whereas if you're growing in soil and you provided hydroponic fertilizer to soil, you would still get lockouts of calcium and phosphorus, and you would get iron being locked up unless it was very well chelated. And so hydroponics allows you to give the correct fertilizer at all times and monitor it as it goes around the system. So if it's a closed loop system, you can monitor the different nutrients depending on the automation you've got, and you can adjust and upregulate it and downregulate it depending on the pH, the EC value, you could even measure the nutrients in there, other factors that can be measured. So you can measure a whole lot more than you can in a soil-borne system. Another major advantage of hydroponics that's not mentioned very often is a lack of contamination. Now, this includes biological and chemical contamination. There are there's a lot, but there are occasionally reports of human diseases being picked up from fresh produce. It's because you think about leafy vegetables, they're not cooked before they are eaten. And so they may be washed, but if you get dirt on them or something happens in the field, you can get biological contamination, E. coli, listeria. These are major problems, real headaches for field-grown vegetables. The main issue for field-grown vegetable farmers is auditing and making sure that they don't get contamination, a biological contamination in the field from like spray from manures or spray from the soil landing on the leaves and things like this. This is their major headache. Whereas in hydroponics, that's far less of an issue because you're not getting that. There's no soil around for that to get contamination, or there shouldn't be. And then there's the other thing of chemical contamination. Now, this is a particular issue in courgettes, and this is from a colleague of mine who told me this, and I looked into it, and it was true that there's an insecticide called dieldrin, and dieldrin was used from the 1940s up until the 1970s. And it contaminates soil. So it stays around in the soil. It's persistent, extremely persistent. And when courgettes are grown in fields that previously used to grow courgettes, and it contains this dieldrin, then they have to be thrown away because they pick up so much dieldrin from the field that cannot be sold in the European Union. And so courgettes can't be grown in anywhere where this insecticide has been used, and where the courgette hits the ground, it can actually pick it up on its skin. So there's a reason to go back to courgettes. I've actually got a customer in Spain who's growing loads of courgettes at the moment, and he works on a biological bacteria product, and he's seeing really good yields. And bacteria is a major issue, and so biologicals is a major issue in courgettes as well. Another advantage that's not often thought about is that it's lightweight. So you don't need to if you're growing somewhere that's not directly in the soil, you don't need to lump soil around. So if you're growing in your loft, if you're a hobby grower, you don't need to lump loads of soil into your loft or your spare room or your conservatory or, things like this. If you live in a flat, a condo, then you don't need to worry about this. Other issues where lightweight is an advantage. If you're going up into space, if you're going to Antarctica, if you're on a cruise ship, these are all places where you might want to grow crops, fresh produce, and lightweight is a really big advantage. Think about it there's lots of people talking about growing crops on the roofs of supermarkets. I think it's not a very good idea because in reality, you've got a lot of auditing and a lot of different crops to grow to fulfill what people want from a supermarket. But it would certainly have to be lightweight if you're going to grow a farm on top of a supermarket roof, because these are, metal clad shell buildings. These are not, Victorian brick or even concrete buildings most of the time. So lightweight is our sixth advantage for hydroponics. You can get it up on the roof. You have a green roof. If you've got a flat roof, you could grow on a flat roof as long as it can hold the weight. And you certainly couldn't do that with soil. It would just weigh far too much. Got a funny story. My sister is a doctor. And I'm a doctor, but I'm a doctor of plants. She's a doctor of humans. I know nothing about human biology. I know absolutely nothing. Some of the stories I could tell you are embarrassing. She's a doctor of humans, and she knows nothing about plants. And she once had a hanging basket, or one of those baskets you put on the side of your house. And she thought that growing media and compost was the same as soil. So she filled it full of soil, and this thing just crashed down off her house because of the weight of the soil. So she should have been using cocoa or peat. And a lightweight hydroponic fertigation system would have been better. So yeah, hydroponics, the sixth advantage, it's lightweight. And the seventh and final advantage of hydroponics is that it is flipping cool. It looks brilliant. It's really interesting to do. Some of the systems you can get just look amazing. If you just like, a bloke that wants to mess around with stuff as a hobby, messing around with pipes and pumps and circularity systems and metal objects and electronic probes and automation, and just that makes hydroponics cool. It is a cool thing compared to growing in the soil. I don't care what you say. And if you're soil growers, hydroponics is cool. So they're the 7 advantages. 1, more crops per area. 2, out of season production, increasing massively what you can charge for your crop. Absence of soil-borne diseases, which makes some crops just uncommercial nowadays. Optimization of fertilizer treatments. 5, lack of contamination, whether that's biological or chemical. 6, super lightweight compared to soil-based systems. And 7, it's flipping cool. That's been Hydroponics Daily for today. And tomorrow we'll have another episode. Might do it on the history of hydroponics. Everyone talks about it starting in the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, but that is absolute nonsense. And I will tell you the real story about where hydroponics originated from tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening.